Alexander the Great, Sikandar, biography, history. Alexander's real name was Alexander III. In India, he is addressed as Alexander. Alexander I was the king of Macedonia and the conqueror of the Persian Empire, who is known for the most military campaigns he carried out in his life. According to Greek historians, Alexander had conquered the entire world, hence he is also called the world conqueror. And Mahan, or the Great, is also added to his name. Alexander, birth and family. Alexander was born on July 20, 356 BC in Pella, which was the ancient Napoleonic capital. Alexander was the son of Philip II, king of Macedonia and Olympia, and his mother was Olympia, princess of the neighboring kingdom of Epirus. Alexander's maternal grandfather was King Neoptolemus. Alexander also had a sister, both of whom were brought up in the royal court of Pella. He saw his father busy most of the time with military campaigns or extramarital affairs, but his mother took great care of Alexander and his sister. Alexander as a king. 336, Alexander's sister, married the king of Molossians, during the festival of which Pausanias assassinated King Philip II. At the time of his father's death, Alexander was 19 years old, and his zeal and passion to achieve power was at its peak. He gathered generals and troops, along with the armory of the Macedonian army, including the army that had fought at Chaeronea. The army declared Alexander a feudal king and helped him assassinate the other heirs of his dynasty. Olympia also helped her son in this. She killed the daughter of Philip and Cleopatra and forced Cleopatra to commit suicide. Alexander's status as feudal king of Macedonia not only gave him control over the Corinthian League, but the southern states of Greece also began to celebrate the death of Philip II and began to divide and express themselves independently. Athene also had her own agenda. Under the leadership of the democratic Demosthenes, the state hoped to get charge of the League. As soon as they started the independent movement, Alexander immediately sent his army to the south and asked them to accept his leadership. By the end of 336, the cities belonging to the Corinthian League made a renegotiation with the Greek states, to which Athens refused and sent its powerful army to fight against the Persian state. But before preparing for war, Alexander secured Macedonia's northern border by defeating the Thracian tribe in 335. Alexander as a warrior. Alexander had seen his father transform Macedonia from a common state into a great military power. Alexander grew up watching his father record victory after victory in the Balkans. At the age of 12, Alexander had learned horse riding very well, and he demonstrated this to his father when he controlled Bucephalus, a trained horse which no one else was able to control. Plutarch wrote about this. Philip and his friends were at first awaiting the result in anxious silence, believing that the career and life of Philip's son were about to end. But at last, when they heard that Alexander, when he saw the victory, he became happy and started clapping. Sikandar's father had tears in his eyes, which were tears of happiness and pride. He got down from his horse and kissed his son and said, "My son, you should look at yourself and at this great empire. This kingdom of Macedonia is very small in front of you. You have infinite talent, Alex." 6.8 Alexander rode Bucephalus in many battles of his life, and that horse remained with him till the end. When Philip gathered his large Macedonian army and began his invasion of Thrace in 340, he left his 16-year-old son Alexander to rule the Macedonian kingdom in his stead, indicating that at such a young age, how responsible was Alexander? As the Macedonian army began to advance into Thrace, the Thracian tribe of the Medes rebelled on Macedonia's northeastern border, increasing the threat to the country. Alexander gathered an army and deployed it against the rebels, and quickly defeated the Medes, captured their fortress, and named it Alexandropolis after himself. 2 years later, in 338 BC, when the Macedonian army invaded Greece, Philip gave his son the post of senior general in the army. The Greeks were defeated in the Battle of Chaeronea, and Alexander, showing his bravery, destroyed the Greek force Theban secret band. Some historians say that this Macedonian victory was entirely based on the bravery of Alexander. Alexander and India. In 328, Alexander defeated Porus's army in India, but he was very impressed by Porus's bravery and made him king again. Alexander tried to move towards the east of Indus, but his army refused to move forward and asked to return. In 325, after Alexander recovered, he headed north with his army towards the Persian Gulf, at which time many people fell ill, some were injured. So some died. To maintain his leadership and influence, he thought of uniting the educated people of Persia with the educated people of Macedonia, so that a ruling class could be created. In this sequence, in Susa, he got many Macedonians married to Persian princesses. When Alexander appointed 10,000 Persian soldiers in his army, he expelled many Macedonian soldiers. Due to this, a large part of the army became angry with him, and they also refused to adopt Persian culture. Alexander then calmed the anger of the Macedonian soldiers by killing 13 Persian army leaders. In this way, the event organized in Susa to improve relations between Persia and Macedonia could not be successful. Alexander, death. After conquering Carthage and Rome, Alexander died in Babylon due to malaria. Alexander died on 13 June 323, when he was only 32 years old. A few months after his death, his wife Roxana gave birth to a son. After his death, his empire disintegrated, and the countries within it began fighting among themselves for power. The cultural coordination between Greece and the East had an adverse effect on Alexander's empire.